Have you ever noticed something strange around you? People who seem uncomfortable in your presence, individuals who drift away for no apparent reason, conversations that suddenly shorten when you arrive, eyes that shift elsewhere when you speak. You haven't done anything wrong. You haven't hurt anyone. You haven't raised your voice. And yet, something about the energy you give off creates an invisible distance you can't quite explain. And maybe you've told yourself it was your fault, that you were too intense, too serious, too difficult to approach. Maybe you even apologized for being who you are without anyone asking you to. Perhaps you softened your edges, smiled harder, spoke less, tried to take up less space, but nothing changed. What if I told you that this is not a flaw you need to correct? What if I told you that what people feel around you is not discomfort, but fear? And not irrational fear, not the fear of physical danger, the fear of what they don't understand, the fear of what they cannot control, the fear of what silently reveals to them everything they did not dare to become. Machiavelli wrote about this more than 500 years ago in The Prince, and nothing in human nature has changed since. Men do not run from what they despise. They run from what they cannot dominate. What you are experiencing is not a curse, it is a signal. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what is happening, not to reassure you with empty phrases, but to help you understand the precise mechanics behind this phenomenon, why it happens, what it says about you, and what you must do with it. Because understanding without action is useless, and misunderstanding is even more dangerous. Here are the 7 signs that you intimidate people without even realizing it. And the truths, no one has the courage to tell you about them. The first sign is that you are comfortable with silence, and this deeply destabilizes the people around you, even if you've never been aware of it. When a pause appears in a conversation, you don't rush to fill it. You don't invent topics. You don't create noise just to avoid emptiness. You allow silence to exist naturally, without discomfort. For most people, that is unbearable. Here's why. Silence forces a person to be with themselves, and the vast majority of individuals have a deeply uncomfortable relationship with themselves. They need external noise to avoid hearing their internal noise. Constant conversation, screens, background sounds, notifications. These all serve the same purpose, avoiding sitting with oneself in silence. Machiavelli understood this weakness better than almost anyone. He observed that restless men, those who flee silence, those who must fill every moment with activity and noise, are the easiest to manipulate, because a man who cannot bear being alone with himself is a man who depends on the gaze of others to feel that he exists, and a man who depends on the gaze of others is a man who can be governed. When you remain calm in a silence that others find unbearable, you radiate something they cannot name. Mastery, inner control. You become living proof that it is possible to sit with oneself without needing to escape. And that proof terrifies them, because it tells them that escape is not mandatory, that the discomfort they've carried for years is not inevitable, that others have faced it and reached the other side. They don't want to hear that. Not yet. So they distance themselves from you. The second sign is closely connected to the first. You don't feel the need to constantly justify yourself. When you make a decision, you make it. When you say no, you say no. Without 10 minutes of explanation, without apologizing for having an opinion, without negotiating your own existence in front of others. Most people are so conditioned to seek external approval that they are incapable of acting without validating every choice with those around them. This conditioning did not come from nowhere. It was built in school, in families, and within social structures that reward conformity and punish independence. Machiavelli had a very cold and lucid understanding of this mechanism. He wrote that the prince who constantly seeks the approval of his advisors eventually becomes their prisoner. The one who needs validation in order to act places his power in the hands of those who validate him. And that dependency is the most discreet, most invisible, and most complete form of servitude. If someone doesn't need your approval to exist, you lose your main lever of influence over them. And losing that lever, for someone who built all their relationships on it, creates a kind of vertigo. So they interpret your independence as coldness, your calm as arrogance, your lack of need for validation as contempt. But it is not what you are doing. It is the mirror you hold up to them without even realizing it. The third sign may be the most powerful of all, and the least understood. You observe. You truly listen. You analyze what is happening beneath the surface, while others speak simply to fill the space. You watch. You remember. You notice contradictions between what someone says and what their behavior reveals. You hear what is not said as clearly as what is said, and people feel it. They have the impression that you really see them. Not their surface, not their social persona, not the image they chose to show, but who they truly are, their fears, their contradictions, their mask. And that frightens them. Not because you are threatening, but because most people have worn their masks for so long that they have forgotten they are wearing one. They have confused the role with the identity. When someone sees beyond the role, the mask becomes useless. And when the mask becomes useless, what remains? That is the question you awaken in them without ever saying it aloud. And it is one of the most destabilizing questions a human being can face. Machiavelli devoted much of his thinking to the art of reading men. He wrote that the prince capable of observing without being observed, understanding the real motivations behind words, seeing fear where others see confidence, holds a weapon no one can take from him, because the one who truly sees can no longer be deceived, and a man who cannot be deceived is a free man. Your ability to see beyond appearances is not aggression. It is a rare skill. But it intimidates those who have something to hide, especially those who are hiding something from themselves. The fourth sign reveals something deep about how you relate to your own existence. You are not afraid of being alone. You can be alone without discomfort, without feeling that you must justify or explain it. You can eat alone, travel alone, spend an evening with yourself and come out of it neither diminished nor broken. In our modern society, that ability has become almost subversive. We live in a world designed to make solitude unbearable. Endless feeds, notifications, platforms that play the next thing automatically. Entire industries are built on one fundamental fear, the fear of being alone with oneself. People who need to be constantly surrounded, constantly stimulated, constantly connected, do not understand how someone could choose solitude. They project their fear of loneliness onto you. They interpret it as arrogance, indifference, or superiority. Machiavelli wrote that the man who does not need others in order to feel whole is the most difficult man to reach, because pressure can only be applied through someone's lack, and the one who lacks nothing that others can give him cannot be controlled by any lever. For someone who depends on others to feel alive, that is extremely difficult to tolerate. The fifth sign is the one few people dare to face because it touches something even deeper. You remind them of what they abandoned. Here is a truth philosophy has always known. But the modern world refuses to say clearly, jealousy is not misdirected admiration, it is pain, the painful memory of who one could have been. When someone looks at you and feels something uncomfortable, that vague sensation that resembles rejection but is not, it is the weight of their own renunciations, the choices they could have made but did not, the life they could have built but did not build, the person they could have become but did not become. Machiavelli understood the behavior that emerges from that pain. He wrote that men wounded in their pride do not seek to improve themselves. They try to destroy what hurts them, because diminishing what surpasses them requires less effort than rising to its level. You are the reflection of their surrender, not because you claim to be, not because you try to be, but because you made choices most people did not dare to make, because you stood where others bent, because you refused compromises others accepted just to keep the peace. Their discomfort around you has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the conversation they have not yet had the courage to have with themselves. So they do what humans have always done when facing something they cannot bear to confront. They label you. They explain you away. They reduce you to a formula that protects them from what you reveal to them. He's strange. She thinks she's someone. There's something weird about him. It is not a judgment about you, it is their way of closing the mirror. The sixth sign triggers the most reactions because it operates in the shadow of every interaction you have. You don't collapse when people test you, and everyone tests you, even those who don't realize they're doing it. Machiavelli observed this phenomenon with striking clarity. He wrote that men always test what they do not understand.
Machiavelli wrote that the prince who wavers under provocation loses twice. He reveals his weaknesses and invites further tests. The one who absorbs without reacting imposes a form of respect around him that physical force never achieves. And this impermeability disarms those who confront it, because a man who cannot be shaken is a man who cannot be governed. People, even unconsciously, want to govern those around them. When they realize they cannot do that with you, they either step away, or they approach you differently, more honestly, with greater respect. The seventh sign is the most subtle and yet the most present in all your interactions. You have high standards for the people you allow into your life, for the situations you accept, for what you tolerate and what you refuse to tolerate. You don't settle for what is merely sufficient. You do not remain in relationships or dynamics that do not match who you are simply to avoid confrontation or emptiness. That intimidates people enormously, and for a reason psychology took a long time to articulate, but Machiavelli understood long ago. In the presence of someone with high standards, many people automatically feel insufficient, not because you judge them, but because they judge themselves in the light of your clarity. Your standards reflect their compromises back to them. Everything they accepted even though they wanted to refuse it. Everything they tolerated because they feared being alone. Machiavelli wrote that the man who accepts everything eventually becomes worth nothing in the eyes of those around him. The ease with which someone yields is not perceived as generosity but as weakness. So they interpret your standards as judgment, arrogance, or rejection. But that is not what it is. It is simply the reflection of what you believe you are worth. And what you believe you are worth is higher than what many people dare to grant themselves. Now the question all of this raises is simple: what do you do with it? The easy answer would be to tell you to embrace your power, to be proud of who you are, to continue forward. That would be a beautiful conclusion, and completely wrong. What Machiavelli would tell you is darker and infinitely more useful. Understanding why you intimidate people does not excuse you from understanding who you intimidate and why. Because the two categories of people who move away from you do not require the same response. The first category is those who move away because they are not yet capable of meeting the level of honesty a relationship with you would require. Those who cannot tolerate your presence because it demands a truth they have not yet developed. Those who interpret your strength as aggression simply because they have never encountered someone who does not try to control them. You have nothing to do to keep them. Their departure is natural selection. The environment is clearing around you to make room for people capable of meeting you where you are. The second category is those who move away not because they cannot meet you, but because you have not yet learned how to make your strength accessible without weakening it. Your depth is real, but it has not yet found the form that allows others to approach it without feeling threatened. Your silence is powerful, but not yet adapted to every context. Your standards are fair, but not yet expressed in a way that invites rather than closes. Recognizing this is not weakness. It is strategy. Machiavelli was not only a man of power. He was a man of reading situations, people, and dynamics with cold precision and without romantic illusions. And he understood something many still confuse today: raw strength is not power. Power is the ability to make your strength be perceived exactly as you intend it to be perceived, no more and no less. The great do not diminish themselves to be loved. They do not.